When a crisis hits a facility, the environment degrades in seconds. Visibility drops, noise levels spike, and the normal flow of the building collapses. In these exact moments, the absence of a communicated plan leads directly to systemic panic and preventable casualties. To prevent this, federal law steps in. Under 29 CFR 1910.38, the specific regulation outlining minimum requirements for workplace emergency planning, organizations with 10 or more employees must maintain a written plan. For smaller teams of fewer than 10, that same plan can be communicated orally. An Emergency Action Plan, or EAP, is a pre-engineered set of decisions. You build it so your team can execute clear, mechanical steps when there is absolutely no time left to think. Treating an EAP as a mere binder sitting on a manager's shelf guarantees failure. When the plan exists only on paper, the physical response becomes disorganized, turning a manageable incident into a fatal one. Step 1 of an effective EAP is establishing a rigid, sequential procedure for reporting a hazard. The response cannot begin until the threat is officially recognized. The plan must detail an exact communication chain. If a fire starts, an employee needs to know exactly what to do first. Dial 911, pull the nearest manual alarm station, and notify the designated internal emergency coordinator. You also have to audit your facility for communication dead zones. These are areas where thick concrete walls block cell service, or where standard alarms cannot be heard. In these zones, the EAP must specify alternatives, like using two-way radios or assigning a physical runner to alert the floor. This split-screen diagram shows the stringent requirements for alarm systems under OSHA Standard 1910.165. On the left, you can see how high ambient noise in a factory can easily overpower a standard audio alarm. To comply, the system must penetrate that environmental friction. On the right, a bright visual strobe pattern provides a sensory override. This also accommodates the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, ensuring the alert reaches employees with hearing impairments. Without a recognized fail-safe trigger system that overcomes this ambient friction, your facility cannot be alerted. The rest of your evacuation plan is paralyzed before a single person takes a step. Once the alarm triggers, the evacuation phase begins. The EAP must define the specific type of response required for the specific threat. A chemical spill outside might require a shelter-in-place order, while a fire inside dictates a full or partial facility evacuation. This floor plan illustrates how you map the physical escape. The plan must establish predetermined primary and secondary escape routes for every distinct work area, ensuring everyone has two paths to safety. OSHA Standard 1910.37 requires exit routes remain unobstructed. Look what happens when an inventory pallet is left in a primary hallway. The route bottlenecks immediately, forcing evacuees to redirect, burning critical seconds. Routinely blocking physical exits or hallways with boxes, carts, or equipment is a severe safety violation. It instantly invalidates the careful routing laid out in your written EAP. Drafting a theoretical route is mathematically useless if the physical architecture of your facility is compromised by the daily operations. Not everyone leaves the building the moment the alarm sounds. Highly hazardous equipment cannot simply be abandoned while running at full capacity. This requires a protocol for critical operations shutdown. The EAP must explicitly identify the last out personnel. These are the highly trained operators authorized to remain in the hazard zone to secure the equipment. These operators execute a precise step-by-step shutdown procedure. They might be closing primary gas valves, powering down high-voltage furnaces, or stabilizing chemical reactors to prevent an explosion. To protect these operators, the plan gives them a predefined threshold. They must have an exact time limit or temperature reading that dictates when they must abandon the shutdown process and save themselves. Relying on improvisation to secure heavy machinery during a fire guarantees secondary disasters. These operators are the most vulnerable link in the chain, and they require exact, pre-planned instructions. The moment the building is cleared, the immediate post-evacuation protocol begins. This phase is entirely focused on the mechanics of verifying human life. Your personnel gather at a predetermined muster point. This location has strict geographic criteria. It must be outdoors, upwind from potential chemical releases, and separated from incoming emergency vehicle routes. Once there, a designated coordinator takes an accurate head count. They compare the people standing in front of them against a current daily roster or the live digital badge and data from that specific shift. This creates a rigid process for identifying missing personnel. When the fire department arrives, the coordinator hands them exact data, who is missing and what department they were working in when the alarm sounded. Without a rigorous accountability ledger, first responders are forced to risk their own lives blindly searching a burning, hazardous structure for people who may already be standing safely in the parking lot. The final required element of the EAP is assigning rescue and medical duties to specific personnel. Here, you must define the hard operational boundaries of employee-led rescue. The plan has to actively prevent the hero syndrome, the natural impulse of untrained workers to run back inside to help their coworkers. Worker-provided medical assistance is strictly a stopgap measure. It is restricted to personnel with verifiable first aid training, and they only operate until professional emergency medical services take over. A worker entering a toxic environment without an SCBA, the self-contained breathing apparatus and air tanks used by professional firefighters, inevitably becomes a secondary casualty. True crisis management requires overriding the human instinct to blindly rescue. The plan enforces strategic, disciplined containment to keep the casualty count from multiplying. A compliant EAP is a living framework. It has to adapt to the physical and personnel changes within your facility over time. OSHA mandates triggers for when you must review and update the plan. You revise it whenever new hazard-producing equipment is installed, when an employee's emergency responsibilities shift, or during your scheduled annual safety audit. Finally, you have to run physical drills. Reading a document does not prepare a person for a crisis. Walking the evacuation routes builds the automatic muscle memory required to move quickly when the sirens start. An actively practiced, legally compliant emergency action plan takes the unpredictable panic of a crisis and replaces it with a calculated, engineered survival strategy.